With the hype of the new Lanterns show building up, I wanted to use this opportunity to talk about the Green Lanterns, specifically the humans. I wanted to go over the many identities that these Lanterns have taken on outside of the status quo. To make things easier, I will be having two separate categories using the naming scheme for Green Lantern. First, there will be a Not a Lantern section, which goes into all the times they may have taken another identity outside any traditional Lantern Corps. Next is Not a Green, which will go over all the times they were a part of another Lantern Corps. I'll probably make a chart for each entry to make things less confusing. I'm also going to try and stick to the main universe versions of the characters, because if I feel like using extended media, it might muddle things up a bit. This doesn't mean I won't make any references or mentions, I just want to primarily focus on the mainline versions. With that, let's get into the video.
For I truly believe no one is beyond redemption. That is why I will always fight, why I am and will always be a Green Lantern.
Alan Scott. Technically speaking, Alan Scott is not a Green Lantern in the traditional sense, but I feel it was important to include him anyway since he was the first to bear the name. For simplicity's sake, I will be putting him in the Not a Lantern section. Same with his other brief identity, Sentinel. While he does have a lantern, it is green, but he is not part of the Green Lantern Corps. Often considered to be one of the greatest lanterns there ever were, Hal Jordan has done so much for the Lantern mythos. Some good, others not so good. But being in comics as long as he has, you would know he has taken on quite the amount of identities, so let's take a look at them. Pole Manning. You thought I was going to talk about Parallax first, didn't you? Well, guess what? Hal had another identity before that, and it was Pole Manning. This involves time travel, so bear with me. Whenever Hal was brought into the future by the Solar Council, his memories were wiped and he took on the role of Pole Manning, a leader and space explorer. Eventually, Hal realized his memories were being erased, so a clone was created to permanently fill in this role. In the end, the storyline was mostly a one-off and was erased after 0 Hour. Parallax. Now we flash forward a bit to the year 1993. Around this time, the Reign of the Superman event was happening, and a fight between Cyborg Superman and Mongol ended up destroying the entirety of Coast City. Like a whole city, man. I do not believe that anyone would be able to be normal after such an event. I mean, just look at Injustice Superman. But it is because of this that Hal went crazy, creating a construct of his dad, watching him die again, made a construct of his mom, she fades away, and then he remakes all of Coast City. But the higher-ups caught that and cut it out swiftly. Hal, who isn't in the best state, decides that he plans on taking out everything on not just the Guardians, but the entire Lantern Corps, taking reins from many different members. So finally, Sinestro of all people was tasked to defeat Hal, but he got defeated. So Kilowog has to get involved, but he eventually is killed by Hal. Since there are no longer any Green Lanterns, he decides to become the villain, Parallax. A lot happened when he took on the Parallax role, as he was a major threat to the DC Universe at this time. He ended up trying to fix problems in his own sick and twisted way, while also hunting down Cyborg Superman. Eventually, something known as the Sun Eater was coming to the solar system to eat the sun. All the heroes attempted multiple ideas, but none of them would work. Meanwhile, Hal finally gets a chance to find Cyborg Superman and avenge all the people who were killed by him in Coast City. Kyle catches him and urges for Hal's help in the matter, and initially, he refuses, until he realizes just how screwed the planet is. Hal attempts to make amends with the people in his life, and decides to sacrifice himself to save the planet, deciding to do one more noble act in his final moments. Although, one thing to consider is the fact that this whole thing ended up getting retconned to being that Hal was being possessed by the entity Parallax, which was something not a lot of people liked too much, along with the whole reviving him bit, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Luckily, the Parallax story does have a bittersweet ending in the form of Spectre. There were a few things going on with the Spectre at this point, but what you need to know is that Hal came back as a spirit and became the new Spectre. During his tenure, he ended up getting his own comic that combined elements of the average Green Lantern comic with elements of the previous Spectre comics. Hal Jordan gets a chance to fight for his redemption and deal with the immense grief he feels after Emerald Twilight. Hal, after dealing with the aftermath of being Parallax, knows that involving himself in vengeance and killing would just put him in the same position he was before, so he ends up becoming a spirit of justice rather than a spirit of vengeance. This was a bit different from the average Green Lantern story, with the way it led more into magic and the main character's personal struggles. I honestly wish this was the new status quo, but eventually Hal was revived and the Parallax retcon happened, so, God of Light. Now we're in the New 52, and a little event happened called the Dark Side War. This event led to members of the Justice League becoming new gods. Superman became the god of strength, Flash became the god of death, and Batman became the god of knowledge. But he's still couldn't figure out who those three jokers were. What is important here is that Hal became the god of light. This happens because parademons begin to attack Oa and try to recruit members of the Corps to be new gods. Many refused and end up turning into parademons. Hal Jordan is on his way to help these lanterns, but when he arrives, he discovers most of them have already been turned into parademons. He discovers that a mother box is the reason for all of this destruction, but isn't doing this blindly. It is in search of a powerful wielder. While the mother box was in search of anyone willing to be a new god, it was Hal that took on that power. Hal was uber powerful in this form, basically becoming, a god. He's able to create universes, change past events, and transcend all natural laws in the universe. He can pretty much get anything that he wants so long as he wills it. But wait, this is comic books, and that's not a part of the status quo. So Hal just wishes the mother box away, but before that he brings back all the lanterns before the attack happened. I really liked God of Light for many reasons. It was a good story, a good concept, and a good suit. It also had a neat power set. I get why they couldn't let him stay this powerful, but man, was this honestly great for Hal. Even the suit was a great design, and I would have loved to have seen more of it. Sometime after this, DC launched a few new books and storylines for our favorite heroes. This was called DCU, and it was something. Before you say anything, no, it's not that DCU. Batgirl got a new look and moved to Burnside. Superman lost most of his powers and was dying. Hal? Well, he got a new power in the form of the Gauntlet of Krona after losing his powers in Green Lantern Volume 5, Issue 40. When first using these powers, he kills Kilowog, again, and becomes a fugitive. The identity of Hal started him out as this bounty hunter character that would explore different parts of space to do jobs for people. I actually didn't mind this too much for Hal when it was going on. I just wish it had been handled better a bit. I also feel as though the design of Hal was pretty good. I can see it being used outside of this identity, so that allows it to feel a bit more unique. Black Star. Hal Jordan, who is now going by Parallax, has teamed up with the Black Stars to go to the remains of Oa and try to recruit the prisoners of that planet. Honestly, I wish I put down more for this section. I didn't read the story myself, but I know it was sort of short. Sorry. So the Hal Jordan section is already pretty long, so why don't I be more brief when it comes to the other Lantern Corps Hal has been a part of. Hal Jordan first used the Sinestro Corp ring in the War of the Green Lantern storyline, but I want to save that story for later. I will talk about the time he got the ring in Injustice. He got it in this original game, but this was expanded upon in Injustice prequel comics. Hal Jordan is working with Sinestro of all people, and at some point Sinestro kills John and frames it as though Guy Gardner did it. So he believes him, for some reason, and he kills Guy. Doing this caused him to lose his Green Lantern ring, so Sinestro manipulates Hal into taking the yellow one, permanently. Following the events of the Sinestro Corp War, Hal Jordan was tasked to escort Sinestro to Korugar for his execution. The Red Lanterns eventually capture Sinestro while on the way to rescue him. Hal also gets captured and hunt from across. Lyra, who is a Green Lantern being infected by the Red Lantern ring, is being calmed down by Hal. As Hal is trying to free her from the influence, he himself succumbs to it after witnessing her death at the hands of Sinestro. This leads to Red Lantern Hal Jordan. I wouldn't really call him a member since he wore the ring briefly, but this does lead to Hal being a part of... To free him from the influence of the Red Lanterns, Hal was given a Blue Lantern ring by St. Walker. This returns Hal to normal, and alongside this, he also wears his Green Lantern ring, creating this hybrid lantern form. Since Blue Lantern rings boost the power of a Green Lantern ring, this allowed for Hal to easily take on Atrocitus. Orange Lantern Corps. A lot happens here, but Hal doesn't actually become an Orange Lantern here. He appears as one in the cover, and the Lanterns try to influence him at some point, but he doesn't technically become an Orange Lantern. He does become one in the short-lived Green Lantern cartoon from the 2010s, though, so, Hal Jordan briefly took this identity after Sinestro and the Blackest knighted him. He bonded with the life entity and then duplicated the lantern's rings to give to a bunch of different heroes involved in the event.
Brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light.
Sorry for having the Hal Jordan section be so long. I tried to shorten it a bit, but seeing as how he is the most popular Green Lantern, there was only so much I could do. Now we move into John, and luckily his other identities are a lot less complex, starting with Dark Star. The Dark Stars, a cosmic police force that are meant to rival the Green Lantern Corps. They were introduced in the 90s sometime after Hal destroyed the Corps in Emerald Twilight. They didn't have rings that created constructs, but they did have high-tech armor. Since there weren't any space cops around, this was the next best thing. Initially, they weren't all that morally good, and even had a pretty corrupt leader. That wasn't until Dark Stars issue 26, or maybe 38, I don't remember which one, where John Stewart helped overthrow him and become the new leader. It honestly wasn't a bad choice for John, and it made for a pretty interesting story. It's not something I would want to come back per se, as it was only really done to let Kyle have the spotlight. Emerald Knight. This was from a one-shot in which John fought against the new god Essek in the Dark Sectors. The ending to this comic has John trick Essek into making a choice that will potentially limit his powers. That's all I got to say about this though, because it's from a one-shot. During the War of the Green Lanterns, John's Green Lantern ring becomes corrupted with fear, so they need replacements. John initially thinks about taking the Orange Lantern ring before being swayed to take on the Indigo ring instead. While it was a short tenure, some fans still want to see him take on this role again, and I wouldn't mind seeing that either. Star Sapphire. He was also a Star Sapphire briefly in the comics. Ultraviolet. This corpse is one that fuels itself on repressed negative emotions of an individual. John was forced into the corpse after being corrupted by Sinestro and becoming the first recruit. He would attack the heroes and become a major threat until he released himself of the control by expressing his feelings. Aww.
Sorry, kid. Superman couldn't make it. So you got an upgrade.
Now we move on to my guy, Gardner. If it wasn't obvious enough, Emerald Twilight was a very controversial storyline. Not just because of what happened, but what happened after it. Hal was Parallax, John was a Dark Star, and Guy was a Vuldarian. Guy was a descendant of a race of aliens who had shape-shifting abilities. I'm not gonna lie, this idea sucked, and the design made things so much worse. That's probably why in GL Rebirth, Guy had all the Vuldarian DNA extracted from him. Which, I'm not sure that's how DNA works, but hey, whatever works, works. Yellow Lantern. Of course, right before the Warrior stuff, he stole Sinestro's ring and became a Yellow Lantern. This was before the retcon that the Yellow Lantern was powered by fear. Red Lantern. What's more important is his time as a Red Lantern. Initially, Guy took on this ring after the death of Kyle Rayner caused him to become enraged, which allowed for the Red Ring of Rage to notice him and bestow new powers on him. At some point in the New 52, Hal Jordan approached Guy for an opportunity to go undercover in the Red Lanterns. Guy challenged Atrocitus in combat, won, and became the new leader of the Red Lantern Corps. I don't want to say too much about his time as a Red Lantern, as I would really recommend giving this a read yourself. I loved Red Lantern Guy Gardner and his approach to leading the Corps, but unfortunately the status quo had to kick in and he switched back to green. Which I can't say I'm too upset about, honestly, but man, do I miss when he was red.
In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power. Green Lantern's light.
Now, for most of the 90s, Kyle Rayner was a Green Lantern, but there were other identities he would take on. For a short time, Kyle Rayner had reached godhood by becoming Ion. This happened after absorbing the leftover energy in the sun following the Parallax sacrifice mentioned earlier in the video. He got a lot of cool powers like being omnipresent and bending time, space, and reality. He would eventually ditch these powers given what they were doing to his mental state, but he would eventually take them on again during an infinite crisis. Also, he became possessed by Parallax at some point. Not too important, but I figured I'd mention it. During the beginning of the New 52, Kyle discovered that he became a magnet for the various emotions in the emotional spectrum. Of course, various members of those Lantern Corps didn't like that Kyle was stealing their rings, so he was getting jumped essentially. He didn't immediately control all these emotions at once, however, and needed to learn all 7 emotions. Man, this feels like Avatar The Last Airbender. Or Scott Pilgrim. You know, because it's 7. Anyways, just like with Guy, this was something that I really liked seeing for Kyle. Being able to take on new Lantern Corps and having their own series for it. I always felt as though this was the best path for Kyle's character. It would have served to have been a great endgame for him. Omega Lanterns. Kyle briefly took on this identity after becoming a diplomat for the planet Vega. This only happens when Kyle becomes unsure on how to help on his journey. His powers are the same as the White Lantern, but the suit looks really different. And it doesn't look half bad, honestly.
In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power. Green Lantern's light!
Fun fact, when Jessica initially debuted, she got the Ring of Falfun and became Power Rain, which is an identity that belongs to the Earth 3 counterpart of Green Lantern. This ring mainly fed off of Jessica's fear, but once she was able to overcome that fear, she became the new Green Lantern. Yellow Lantern. This was an idea initially proposed in the future state, but for a time Jessica Cruz took on the Yellow Power Ring after defeating some members of the Sinestro Corps. Jessica at this point saw fear as a tool for motivating people rather than being used maliciously. While I do think it was a good path for a character, I can understand why they abandoned it. Simon Bass and Joe Mullane, I'm probably butchering that, really don't have much outside of the Green Lantern Corps, sadly. So yeah, those are the human Green Lanterns and all the identities they held. I won't lie, this was an extremely long video to work on, mainly because of the Hal Jordan section. I plan on doing more Green Lantern videos in the future. I also plan on uploading a lot more this year. Make sure to tell me your thoughts on the Lantern show when it comes out, or what you think the Lantern show is going to be like. I don't know, the show hasn't come out yet from time of recording. Until then, this has been Hallway, and I hope you make it through life your way. Have a good one.